Gotta get your scratches in first. Get you ready to film. Is that a good scratch? Filming. Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess. This is Nigel, and welcome to another installment of Book CommuniTEA, where we try to keep you abreast of the goings on in the bookish community. And we bring chaos in the form of Nigel. Today's video is brought to you by Kleenex, actually it's Puffs, and tea, because as you can tell, I'm still sick. I apologize, I thought maybe it would pass by now, but if I didn't film this, I would get behind, so I'm just gonna push through. I apologize for my congestion and how many cut scenes are gonna be so I can blow my nose. And I hope the volume is okay. I've been hearing since filming on this camera that it's good. I still wanna order a mic just to, you know, not feel like I have to yell, but I hope you can hear me okay. So let's get to it. Somehow that toy has survived over a year, but we buy other ones that are supposed to be for aggressive chewers and he destroys them in 8 minutes. Make it make sense. It doesn't. I'm sorry, I keep looking at, I'm not used to having, like, you know, being able to see myself, so I keep looking there. So I'm sorry if my vision or my focus keeps shifting. But first I wanted to touch quickly on two international things. Things I usually talk about here are US centric because a lot of the publishing industry is focused in America. I'm American. You know, I do try to follow people from different countries, but a lot of the stuff tends to be American centric. But these are two things, one from France and one from Germany, that people have sent me and I thought I should share. So the email I got about what was happening in France says, I'm contacting you from France because I'm a big fan of your tea videos and I got some French tea to share. A newspaper published a big investigation regarding sexual harassment in the biggest SFF publishing house in France. The link that was provided is in French, but basically the boss of the publishing house harassed authors and employees for years, and the journalists gathered a lot of testimonies. Sadly, while the publishing house prints some of the biggest fantasy series like Name of the Wind, the Gentleman Bastard series, Wheel of Time, Witcher, there seemed to be no reaction outside of France by the authors of those series, and even in France, nothing much was done. There are petitions and conventions say they will change their rules to avoid harassment as much as they can, but it's not a big bang though. Most of the news stays in the small world of French fans of fantasy. Fantasy authors are usually very precarious, don't sell a lot of books, so going against a publisher is not easy, so anyway, I wanted to share. So going through my phone, I was looking at old screenshots to delete some, and I did find that I had an article, I think that I translated from French to English, and the publisher is Stéphane Marsan. Apparently, and there's been numerous people who've come to speak up against him, and including authors and former employees of the publishing house, pointing to inappropriate behavior on the part of the director, Stéphane. And some of the testimonies from people include that if they didn't agree to, you know, his advances, that they would either, you know, cancel their work, or someone claims to have been fired when she wouldn't, you know, engage in certain behaviors with him. So that is beyond wrong and upsetting, and I hadn't heard of it, so I just wanted to share that. So maybe if there's some other international people that maybe you could learn about it. I don't know how we get the authors to be aware of it. I know when there was a situation last year in how Brazil was publishing, it became kind of a big thing on Twitter, and some of those authors are going to reach out to their agents or whoever controlled the rights in foreign countries. I don't know if that's something that could be done, but that's gross. And I don't know if he is still in his position or if he's been let go, but he should not have that position anymore because he's obviously using it to manipulate and take advantage of people, and that's disgusting. So the second international news is out of Germany, and so I had not heard of this prize, but after hearing what the foundation, whoever behind it, I'm not surprised. But essentially in Germany, there's a Catholic teen book prize. So in an open letter, authors asked for the Conference of Bishops to rethink their decision to go against the jury's vote to not honor the book Paper Piano by Elizabeth Steinkellner. The council decided against the suggested title for not fitting the criteria of the book prize. Since the jury refuses to suggest another one, there will be no award ceremony in 2021. In an open letter, the authors speak of a missing trust in the jury's ability to find good representation that mirrors real life from the bishops. The book is about a 16-year-old girl written in diary form. It tackles poverty, death of an honorary grandmother, friendship, and sexuality. A friend of the protagonist is transgender. It's speculated that this or the details about sexuality were the deciding factor against the book. The authors are also questioning the credibility of the prize and urging to reconsider their decision. Another organization hopes the Conference of Bishops might reconsider to not remove themselves from the realities children and teenagers face nowadays. So the issues the bishops had were not disclosed. The book features, next to illustrations, a single mother and siblings from different fathers, commentary on sexuality, and a transgender friend. Apparently too much for the Conference of Bishops. So essentially last year there wasn't a book awards, and then this year they're deciding not to crown a winner. I think the one that was in the running to be the winner is this book, and it has these topics in it, and seeing as it's the Catholic Children Teen Book Prize, I'm not surprised that they are going to skirt around and give vague reasons for why it's not going to be selected if it includes talks of sexuality, especially a transgender character. Of course they're not going to come out and say that, but they're going to say it doesn't fit into our standards, it doesn't meet the criteria. So I'm not surprised, but that's still upsetting, and they're just like, oh, we just won't crown a winner. But again, a Catholic Teen Book Prize, I'm not surprised. And I have articles for both of these. They are in French and German, but if you're in Google, you can translate them. They're not going to be exact, but you can get a general gist. But I just wanted to share those things because people sent them to me, so I figured they deserved to be shared as well to let more people know. So another screenshot I came across when I was trying to clean out my phone was from in May 12th. It was talking about the Simon & Schuster Penguin Random House deal, which I still don't think it has been completely approved. But this is about a UK Competition and Market Authority, CMA. And so they were doing their own investigation, and then the US is doing their own investigation. But the UK's Competition and Markets Authority has cleared Penguin Random House owner Bertelsmann acquisition of Simon & Schuster after carrying out an investigation. Last November, Bertelsmann announced that it had reached a $2.2 billion deal to buy Simon & Schuster from Viacom CBS. The merger would see Simon & Schuster continue to be managed as a separate publishing unit under the Penguin Random House umbrella. So on March 22nd, the CMA, the UK's competition watchdog, announced it would examine whether the deal fell under the merger provisions of the Enterprise Act 2002 and whether it may be expected to result in a substantial lessening of competition within any market or markets in the United Kingdom for goods or services. So today, May 12th, the CMA announced that it had cleared the anticipated acquisition of Penguin Random House of Simon & Schuster. The full text of the decision will be published shortly. The deal is still facing further scrutiny by the U.S. Department of Justice. The DOJ was urged by American writers groups to intervene and step up its own review, making a second request for information. The second request often involved issuing a subpoena called a civil investigation demand to obtain market share information and documents on markets and the transaction's competitive implications. A spokesperson for Penguin Random House UK said, "We're pleased that the Competition and Markets Authority has cleared Penguin Random House's acquisition of Simon & Schuster in the UK. The process in the US is ongoing and we are working constructively with the authorities there." I really don't understand how they could say that the purpose of this committee is to examine whether the deal fell under the merger provisions and if it is expected to result in a substantial lessening of competition with any market or markets in the United Kingdom from goods or services. How could it not lessen competition if there's already so few big publishing houses, and now one of the biggest is going to take another one of the biggest under their umbrella? Like, sure, they'll still be technically Simon & Schuster, but they're under Penguin Random House. So that was already Penguin Random House together, and now you got Penguin Random House Simon & Schuster. It's too much. I'm glad it's still under investigation in the United States. I'm not going to say I have major hope. I just hope it doesn't go through. We do not need to be down to 4 major publishers. I have prior videos talking about this, or you can just Google to see why it's not good to only have 4 major publishers. Ugh, no. I feel like I'm not an economist, I'm not a whateverist that would study these things, but just It just keeps happening with so many industries that we keep getting less things. So less publishers, less. Disney owns everything. They've got ESPN and all these other things. And if you look at like a map of something, it's like these 5 or 6 corporations that own everything. It's like Disney and Viacom, Fox, or whoever. And then they own all of these things. Same like with food brands, like so many things. Just because they has a different name on it, you're like, oh, there's all these things. But no, really they're under like, it's like Nestle owns all these things. And it's just not good. Okay, my battery is at half. Okay, so I need to keep talking. I had to order some spare batteries because I talk for a long time. Okay, so I saw this take on Twitter, and it was sent to me, and I've seen some reactions, so I'm gonna read it. And it said, my pride hot take is, if you're writing young adult, especially contemporary in 2021, and your book doesn't have a single queer character, you're making an active choice in a very clear statement. Have you met a teenager recently? The kids are gay. Even if your main character is cis-het, and even if their close friends are all cis-het, I promise you multiple out queer kids run in their circles. If your argument is there were no queer kids at your school in 2009, you're wrong. Your target audience has now been able to see at least some queer rep in media since they were little. They grew up with the internet, they have the exposure and knowledge so many of us didn't. Not having the concepts to describe your own human experience is traumatic. Living in fear of your own identity is traumatic. So many kids have now escaped that trauma. That means they're visible. So if you write them out of your stories, evaluate who you're actually writing for. I guess it needs to be said, I'm not demanding closeted creators out themselves, but this isn't solely directed to members of the alphabet mafia. I'm asking all writers to create casts of characters that reflect their audience. Diversity does not require justification. And some of the replies I saw, I say this gently, but this is kind of not it. There are a lot of folks who can't write queer narratives if they want to, particularly queer by POC living in countries where their very queerness could get them jailed or killed. LOL. Also, I don't know, man. LOL. I don't really want queer characters in books for the sake of the author feeling like they absolutely must include them, because then it's gonna feel hollow. I'd much rather support queer stories by queer authors who genuinely care about their queer readers. Like, I just think it wasn't the take that they were, it's just not as a hot take as I think they thought it was. But a lot of people were like, no, that's just like saying I don't know, it just comes out as every single book must include a queer character, and then just like that person said, they're going to end up just putting them in there for the sake of it, and it's not going to be natural. So if it's not going to be good and authentic, well researched, if that's not your own experience, don't do it. Let's just be putting stuff in here because it is relevant. There are a lot of queer kids who are out. They are seeing it more in media. It's definitely more visible, which is an amazing thing. But one, if you don't feel safe to do that, if you're not ready to tell that story, depending on where you live, so many different things go into why somebody wouldn't include a queer character in their story, even if they were a queer person themselves. And just like, no. Nigel. But someone said, I mean, this is how we end up with tokenized characters and paint bucket diversity, though. Truly. Again, if you see this Twitter thread, you can go to you can't reply to it anymore, but you can go to the quote tweets, and almost everyone is saying a version of the same thing. Like, this is a really privileged take, especially a very, if not American, very Western, white-centered take that sure, it would be great if you could see more queer people in stories, but that it's not your place to tell everybody that their story has to have that, and there are many reasons why people may not choose to or may not be safe to write queer characters into their stories. So, stop it. The last response to that I'll share is from Rebecca Weatherspoon that says, the assumption that all queer teens are out is harmful. The assumption that all adults are capable of telling thoughtful queer teen stories is dicey at best. Please do not just shove a queer character in a book just cuz. Amen, amen, amen. Right, boo-boo? Sorry. Boo-boo, we're working against the camera battery. We can't be pussyfooting all over the place now. We're gonna see how long this last part of my battery lasts. But a few days ago, it was announced there's a new anthology that's being edited by Zoraida Cordova. And the tweet said, in January 2020, I had the seed for this anthology, a collection exploring the Latin American diaspora through the lens of sci-fi and fantasy. I was so fortunate that the brilliant authors I asked said yes, and that we had a contest for 2 stunning new voices. The anthology is called Reclaim the Stars, 17 Tales Across Realms and Space, edited by Zoraida Cordova, and it has multiple authors included. And so the people who were the focus of the controversy on Twitter are David Bowles, Sarah Faring, and Isabel Ibanez. So Isabel Ibanez wrote Woven in Moonlight, and I remember seeing a little bit of stuff about that when that came out last year. Sarah Faring wrote The 10th Girl, which I won from a Goodreads contest, the only book I've won, of course, but I ended up giving it away. And David Bowles I had never heard of. So apparently they all are anti-Indigenous. So I haven't read any of their books, but I was watching Lowe's video where in her wrap-up she talked about Woven in Moonlight, and I think that Isabel Ibanez is Bolivian American maybe, and in the story in Woven in Moonlight the Indigenous people are seen as the villains, and she goes into way more detail. I'll link the video down below, but just using Isabel also used like actual gods in the book and wrote them as like these bloodthirsty gods, and talked about a plant that is native to the area that, you know, white people came in and took and turned into cocaine, but, you know, using it in the book, saying that this plant is harmful when actually the plant is used by Indigenous people, and just because the plant is used to make something else does not make the plant itself harmful, and many things. So I would, if you're interested in controversy around Woven in Moonlight, I would watch Lowe's video. She herself said this is not about canceling the author, it's about bringing awareness to this and how she is, how she's portraying Indigenous people, and to look up like the crisis in Bolivia. And so I think we all should do that. Then David Bowles and Sarah Faring, like I said, I haven't read their work. Okay, editing Jessica here, looking a mess. I got my tragus pierced today though. Oh my god. Okay, so again, going through my phone, found some screenshots, but I have no idea where I got them from. Like I don't have a lot of context, just what the screenshot says. And then I also found an article about David Bowles. So I'm gonna share these things. Again, I don't know where they're from, but it was somebody obviously talking about this anthology because it goes through all the authors that are included. And I'm just going to read it. Zoraida Cordova was born in Ecuador and lives in New York, her home. Vida Ayala, born and raised in New York. They have the Puerto Rican flag in their Twitter. David Bowles, born in Maryland, Mexican-American. This is the dude that allegedly claims to be the voice for Indigenous, despite not being one. JC Cervantes, born and raised in California, has a book called Tortilla Sun, so like, kill me now. Sarah Faring, born and raised in LA, has Argentinian parents, has a book about an Argentinian fleeing the military regime, so you bet your ass I'm gonna EPUB that. Romina Garber was born in Buenos Aires, but raised in Miami. We know about her. Isabel fucking Ibanez. Anna Marie McLemore was born and raised in California and is Mexican-American. Yamil Said Mendez is Argentine-American, lives in Utah. Nina Moreno was born and raised in Miami, then Georgia, has Cuban and Colombian parents. Circe Moskowitz doesn't specify where, but it says in their author page that they currently reside in the Midwest, which is as American a clarification as it gets. Midwest of fucking what? Only an American who thinks everyone already would know would put it like that. Twitter says they live in Kentucky. Maya Montaigne lives in New York. Not much other information I can find. Linda Raquel Nieves Perez is born and raised in Puerto Rico and living in Boriquen. Finally, Daniel Jose Older doesn't say much, but he was born and raised in the USA. Nowhere else says otherwise. Claribel A. Ortega is born and raised in New York, has Dominican heritage, and has a Yorkie called Pancho Villa. He was a Mexican provincial governor during the Mexican Revolution, for fuck's sake. Mark Orshiro doesn't say about their heritage, but they were born and raised and currently live in New York. Liam Rivera lives in California. Don't know where they were born, but they've written some articles on Puerto Rico's politics and protest. So yeah, I had those random screenshots, and obviously that person has some issues with the origins or where people are from who are part of this anthology. I don't know if they're trying to say a lot of them were born in America, so their voices aren't valid. I don't know. I literally just had those 3 screenshots, and I was like, thanks, Past Jessica. So much context. We love that. From the general information I could find is that I guess David Bowles has made himself kind of the voice of Indigenous people, but he's not Indigenous. And then Sarah Faring, I don't know if she like appropriated Indigenous culture in her book or something, but I can't find exactly, and I haven't read her book. I just did know that she did work for Penguin Random House, and then her book was published, and I didn't hear great things about it from anyone. But this article that came up from David Bowles was from March of this year, and it says race fishing. Book covers is not only problematic, it directly hurts authors of color. So there's this book cover, and I remember seeing this on Twitter, and I couldn't figure out who people were talking about. But there's a book cover, and it's like a science fiction or fantasy book, and it has a black woman on the cover. But the article says, a few weeks ago, discourse erupted when David Bowles revealed the new cover for his book, The Blue Spangled Blue. First published in 2009, The Blue Spangled Blue poises itself as an immersive sci-fi epic filled with an enormous cast of characters. On the cover was seemingly the protagonist of this ensemble, a beautiful dark-skinned black girl with braids, standing in front of a deep indigo background and starry outline of a man. An absolutely beautiful cover promising what appeared to be a sci-fi tale of a black heroine embarking on an adventure amongst the cosmos, or finding a memorable star-crossed romance. Unfortunately, however, that ended up not being the case. A few hours after Bowles revealed this cover, the criticism popped up online over what many felt was a misrepresentation of the actual content of the story. The black woman on the cover was in fact not the protagonist, and what was worse, she apparently was only a minor character whose POV was never delved into in this particular book. Bowles issued a statement acknowledging the criticism and quickly released a new cover more accurately showcasing the content of the story and the characters within. The uncomfortable question still lingered. Why did the cover reflect something else the first time? Many black authors who are now published have spoken on the obstacle they face in getting their stories to the publishing stage. There have been many stories covered here and in other places of black authors who are told that black stories don't sell and that black characters aren't marketable. Octavia Butler and Nnedi Okorafor have even experienced the covers of their books being whitewashed in the name of marketability. Which is why now, during this beautiful blossoming of black stories and black authors finally being given visibility, it seems especially a bad taste to see white or non-black POC authors suddenly writing books and debuting book covers that prominently feature black characters. It doesn't feel appreciative, it feels appropriative. It doesn't feel genuine, it feels exploitative. And furthermore, it unfortunately gives off the energy of taking advantage of what is actually very beautiful and long overdue progress for selfish purposes, of hopping on this aforementioned diversity trend train to incorrectly market stories as black written and featuring black characters. So I'll link this article because it continues to go on. But yeah, I remember when this conversation was happening on Twitter, and I could not remember what book they were referring to because I saw a tweet. It was by Bethany C. Morrow that said, is publishing putting black girls on covers to sell books now as bait when they're not the POV character? Is that what's going on? And I was just so confused. So this was it. And hopefully I can find a picture of the new cover. But that is one concrete thing I could find about David Bowles. And so back to the story. But if you have more information or a link to something or a specific book where they perpetrated these things, I would love to know so I can give more information. But people have been upset about this anthology, including those people who are anti-Indigenous, and it's supposed to be, you know, exploring the diaspora of Latin America. And so there have been some people who are like, you're going to cancel the whole thing over 3 people, and some people are like, well, you know, you can support the other authors by reading their other work, and you don't have to read this. So it's been interesting on Twitter seeing that. Because, I mean, there's a lot of other people in here who I'm sure have great stories, and that stinks that people may not read their stories that they contribute to this because of harm others have caused. But I understand not wanting to support those people when they have shown to be anti-Indigenous and whatever else they may have done. So I have seen that, and again, if I find any more information before like editing it, I'll add it in here about what exact thing they did or what book it was in for David Bowles and Sarah Faring. But I know for Isabel it was Woven in Moonlight, very harmful portrayal of Indigenous people in her book. And so now they all have stories in this anthology. So there's that. And also a few things I wanted to share. Someone said, people on book Twitter haven't had problems boycotting, not supporting other projects in the past, but suddenly it's controversial to do so when there are 3 authors who've appropriated indigenous cultures involved. Nah, I hate it here. I really do. It's not herd mentality. It's literally choosing not to support continuously racist authors whose fan bases aren't even going to be affected anyway. If you want to support, you're welcome to do so, and that's your decision, but please don't go around attacking people for their decision. One of these authors has specifically caused a ton of harm to South American readers who've gotten harassed for speaking out on the insanely harmful, problematic content in her work. I don't think she has any business reclaiming when she launched her career by appropriating. Yikes. Lastly, so we're going to talk about TJ Klune, The House in the Cerulean Sea. So a few days ago on Twitter, of course this happened when I took my little break when we went on our mini vacation, a thread started popping, and it says, so I read The House in the Cerulean Sea and thought it was fine. But then I learned it was directly inspired by the Canadian government's forced removal of Indigenous children into residential schools, and why in all the rave booktube reviews has no one really talked about this. Ended up writing a few hundred words on this and why it bothers me so much, mainly co-opting historic trauma for fantasy worlds and then not doing the work of accurately writing the trauma is not a good look. Want to specifically thank the person on Instagram who sent me the interview with the author and share the Goodreads review. I'll post an essay I wrote later when I can properly link to everything. And if anyone wants the author's reasoning, here's the interview where he lays out his inspiration. It's sad for me because my life motto is have courage and be kind, but you can't co-opt other people's trauma and wash it over with kindness. So as many of you know, I talk about The House in the Cerulean Sea all the time. It came out last year. Was the perfect book to me, especially for last year, because last year was very hard for a lot of us, still is, and it felt like a big warm hug, and a lot of people have raved about this. And so first I would like to say, it kind of bothers me, this happens all the time, when someone says, why is no one talking about this? It's because most people didn't know. I didn't know. We don't know everything. When, contrary to maybe popular belief, I don't know if people think this, when I pick up a book and read a book, I do not go Google the author. I really don't. It's just not, if it doesn't have to come up in my life, I would rather not know. So I never Googled anything. I knew like he had another book coming out. I've heard about other books. I follow him on Twitter. I didn't see this interview. I don't seek out author interviews and stuff like that. So why isn't anyone talking about this? That happens with so many things. It's usually because people don't know about it, because you know how much shit there is just in the booktube community in general, and then worldwide. People can't keep up, can't know everything. So I just would like to address that. We had to take an intermission for the battery to charge. Yes, I currently only have one battery. I have more on the way, but right now I've only got one. Okay, we're back. I'm out of breath. Actually, I'm going to go back and I'm going to read the interview, and then I'll read the Goodreads review because it includes excerpts from the interview. So it's titled The Big Idea, TJ Klune. This was posted on March 17th of 2020. So, by John Scalzi. In the writing of The House in the Cerulean Sea, author TJ Klune looked a little history north of our border and current events right here in the US to inform his world of magic and bureaucrats who seemingly trudge through it. TJ Klune. When an author gets an idea in their head, one with legs that isn't just a fleeting thought, it tends to worm its way into our brains and won't leave us alone until we either write it down or kill with fire. Before I started The House in the Cerulean Sea, I had the pieces of an idea. These little shards that didn't quite come together into a clear picture. It had to do with magical people dealing with fear and discrimination. Specifically, it would involve magical children, those who should have been protected at all costs, but instead were shunned for simply existing at all. It helped, maddeningly so, that I could already hear the main character's voice in my head, a fussy fellow named Linus, who was a stickler for the rules, who would be a caseworker in an Orwellian world where the government sees all, knows all, and controls everything. Linus would work for said government with the bureaucratically gloomy name, the Department in Charge of Magical Youth, or Dikemi. A drone who did as he was told because it was expected of him, and he'd be queer because that's what I write, queer people from all walks of life. The pieces were there, but the picture was still fuzzy. It remained fuzzy until I stumbled across a 60s scoop, something I'd never heard of before, something I'd never been taught in school. I'm American, by the way. In Canada, beginning in the 1950s and continuing through the 1980s, Indigenous children were taken from their homes and families and placed into government-sanctioned facilities, such as residential schools. The goal was for primarily white middle-class families across Canada, the US, and even Europe to adopt these children. It's estimated over 20,000 Indigenous children were taken, and it wasn't until 2017 that the families of those affected reached a financial settlement with the Canadian government totaling over $800 million. I researched more and discovered instances the world over in my own country and abroad of the same thing happening. Families being separated because they were different, because of the color of their skin, because of their faith, because those in power were scared of them. I wrote The House on the Cerulean Sea in the spring of 2018. Months later in the summer, news exploded from our southern border about families searching for a better life being separated and put into government-sanctioned facilities. History, as it does with terrifying consistency, was repeating itself once again. Let me be upfront about something. I'm a white dude. There really isn't much I should be preaching about. I'm queer, and I'm a loud one at that, but the marginalization I face because of this isn't to be compared to others facing bigotry. It's not a contest. It sucks across the board, but I'm a mid-30s cis man in America. I'm privileged in ways others are not. I know this. So when I wrote Cerulean, I knew I had to do so carefully to make sure what I decided on to be the central theme of the story wouldn't be lost. The central theme, kindness. Look, I get how that sounds. I'm sure more than a few of you reading this rolled your eyes at the words. It's trite, isn't it? Sure it is, but stick with me for a moment. As I write this, it's 2020 and we're so divided, I don't know how we'll ever recover from it. Those in power fling insults as easily as they breathe. People take to the streets in masks and hoods, spreading their hate as if they're gospel. We're also angry almost every second of every day, and we have a right to be. We should be angry. The world is on fire. The news grows more dire with each breaking broadcast. People are hurt or worse, killed because of who they love, what they believe, or the color of their skin. We've lost our way, and I worry that this has become our new normal. I can only do what I think best, right? And so I began writing The House on the Cerulean Sea, imagining a world not so different from our own, where people who are different than the majority are controlled by those in power. The smallest of us, the children, are taken from their homes and placed into euphemistically named orphanages overseen by caseworkers in Dicamy. Linus is sent on a top secret assignment to investigate a special orphanage, one hidden away, housing what the world considers to be the most dangerous of children. What he finds there changes him. How exactly, you'll have to read for yourself, but I never strayed away from kindness as a theme. It was and still is important to me. To offer a hand in compassion rather than a fist raised in anger seems like it should be common sense, but many appear to have forgotten that. We, like Linus discovers, need to use our voices for those who can't speak for themselves, those who should be allowed to be small in this great wide world, but sometimes we also need to shut up and listen to those small voices, because if we don't, we run the risk of drowning them out. We are better than what we currently see. I know we are, and I don't believe it's too late for us to course correct. It's going to take time and a hell of a lot of hard work, but we're capable of it. The House on the Cerulean Sea is my great wish into the universe, a fable about goodness in us all, if only we believe in it. Hope is a weapon, kindness our battle cry. As long as we stand together, I know we'll shape this place we call home into something we can all be proud of. So, the main part of that has upset people, oh God, is that he mentioned he had a rough idea for his book, and he says that it didn't become clear until he was researching and he came across the story, the 60s scoop. So when I was Googling what exactly the 60s scoop was, I came across many things, and I am reading from one article that says the 60s scoop is the catch-all name for a series of policies enacted by provincial child welfare authorities starting in the mid-1950s, which saw thousands of Indigenous children taken from their homes and families, placed in foster homes, and eventually adopted out to white families from across Canada and the United States. These children lost their names, their languages, and a connection to their heritage. Sadly, many were also abused and made to feel ashamed of who they were. That's just a brief synopsis, and I know that this has been going on, or was going on, in Canada and the US way earlier than the 1950s, and I think it was said the last residential school was closed in 1996, so it's not that far removed. So so I started seeing people talk about it, how basing this book on really traumatic events that have happened to Indigenous people was, and the phrase was used in that tweet thread, co-opting trauma. And I'm not being a smartass here when I tell you I still don't fully understand myself what co-opting trauma means. I tried to Google it, I tried to ask people, and I still really don't understand how to explain co-opting trauma besides using a story of someone else's trauma in your story. So if you know how to explain it better than that, could you please let me know, because I kept trying to look it up and I couldn't find a good definition for that phrase. I'm so sorry, I'm so congested. So the Goodreads review that people are referencing, I'll be honest, I read it and I loved it. Writing was great and everything. Then months after reading it, I discovered that his book was inspired by Canada's 60s scoop, and it has an excerpt from the article. Even this description of residential schools is sugarcoating it. He bedazzled and turned into fantasy the trauma of children who are forcibly separated from their families in a cultural genocide that involved torture, sexual abuse, and murder. So part of an actual genocide, and then acted like it was all figured out after a settlement, literally profiting off of missing and undocumented children and people who are still living with trauma of residential schools, who are still living like second-class citizens in their country due to the impact of those schools, which ran well into the mid-90s, along with so many other atrocities committed against them over the past hundreds of years. And then they put also from a podcast. So then they have a link to the podcast. So I'm just going to the transcript to find the part that they're referencing. So the interviewer says, as somebody who's watched your career, it's so thrilling to see you cross into this realm. And with this book, where did this book spring from your head? Because it's really unlike anything we've seen from you so far. TJ says, it is. The House in the Cerulean Sea it's a bit of a quirky fantasy, but it deals with some very real, topical, specific issues. It actually started from a Wikipedia article because I have a tendency to get lost in Wikipedia for a long time, and that's a problem. But I will be in one article and I click on another one and then another one and then another one until I'm completely off what I was trying to look up to begin with. The wiki wormhole is a dangerous place. I understand. But I came across something known as the 60s scoop, which was in Canada during the 50s and 60s, where Indigenous children were taken from their homes and put into government-sanctioned orphanages, for lack of a better word. And the idea stuck with me. It was something that I could not shake. And this was at the end of 2017-ish. I had just finished writing my YA debut, The Extraordinaries, and I was looking into wanting to continue along in that vein with something a little bit different. And so when I stumbled upon this article about children being taken because they were different or they didn't adhere to what standards people thought they should be at the time, it was something that I couldn't get out of my head. But I didn't want to co-opt, a history that wasn't mine. I'm a cis white dude, so I can't ever really go through something like what those children had to go through. So I sat down and I was like, I'm just going to write this as a fantasy. I'm going to write about an almost Orwellian society where the government sees everything and watches everything you do, and follow a man who is stuck in a rut. He's a cog in a bureaucratic machine named Linus. I wanted to follow him. He's not necessarily prejudiced at the beginning, but he believes everything everybody has ever told him. His supervisors, the management, superiors, everybody's told them that things have to be a certain way. So he's gone that certain way. And when I finished the book in spring of 2018, it was a couple months later that all the news came out of everything that goes on at the United States southern border, with children being taken away from their parents and put into government-sanctioned camps. And I was like, this is a little too close to home. I don't know how to feel about this. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, if I thought I should change it or if I should leave it as it is, because it's topical now more than ever. And it's prescient, and it sucks that this has to be this way. But I think that the story will bring the idea that we have to speak up. We have to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves, and that's kind of the theme of the whole book, is to raise your voice for those who don't have one. So that was the excerpt from the podcast that they were sharing. That he said, I didn't want to co-opt a history that wasn't mine, but I'm going to write this as a fantasy. And the review continues, I'm sorry, what? Can you imagine if someone said this exact thing, but using the Holocaust or slavery in America? As a cis white dude, I don't understand what being a slave or being black in America is like, but if I turn that story into a whimsical, humorous fantasy, I think I can sort of maybe try. And the icing on the cake, once you realize the source material is, the message is essentially, this place isn't so bad. They just needed to find someone in the system who cared about them. Also, while they are still different, they are still kids who deserve love. Stop it. I honestly wish white folk would stop using BIPOC trauma as a springboard for their ideas. They linked places you could donate, and then also said, I truly hope if TJ reads this, he understands why what he did was so problematic and educates himself. In part of that podcast episode I posted, he says we have to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves, and that's the kind of theme of the whole book, is to raise your voice for those who don't have one. You took someone else's story and changed it to something more palatable. You took their voices away. If this really struck a chord with you, you're a talented writer. You could have easily written something else and still use your platform to elevate and amplify Indigenous voices, something you can still do. So once that was out, of course, the normal trend of things that happen on Twitter were a lot of quote tweets sharing the thread and the article. A lot of people were like, I had no idea. This was on my TBR. I'm no longer going to read this. Instagram really hyped up this book for me, but no more. This is fucked up, but not surprising. White people co-opt trauma for their benefit every day. I've updated my Goodreads review and will be no longer recommended this book. I got this feeling while reading the book. The co-opt of Indigenous trauma and some other issues made The House on the Cerulean Sea an incredibly dark book for me. I was expecting joy. I found family from the reviews. Instead, I found trauma and fat phobia disguised as fantasy. Someone said, as someone who read this book and raved about it, I encourage people to read this thread. You must look at hype books with a critical eye and listen to survivors directly impacted by this trauma. Well, I feel like there was either I loved this book and I found this out, this is so disappointing, or I didn't like this book anyway and I knew there was a reason. Another tweet I wanted to share was friendly reminder that regardless of authorial intent, harmful material is harmful material. You can still like the book, just don't speak over Indigenous peoples. There were various threads of people talking back and forth, and someone was saying that they didn't agree with that person's take, saying that he just found the 60s scoop amidst other research and that the book wasn't directly reflective of that. But someone who is I believe is an Indigenous reviewer said, with all respect I can muster, if you're not Indigenous, it doesn't matter if you agree with it or not. Also, it's Indigenous with an uppercase I, and it's not Indigenous Canadians. They are First Nations people. So at the end of the day, I'm really struggling with this one because obviously I talk about this book a lot. I recommend it to a lot of people. I loved it, but I am not Indigenous, so I don't have a say, you know, or like my opinion doesn't count. I don't know how to say that. Like, it's not my, if you base the book off of Indigenous trauma, I'm not Indigenous, so I can't speak on it or have a valid voice on it. I really don't know how to explain this. I can't figure out the words right now. TJ Klune hasn't said anything about it on Twitter, and also people are really upset because of the recent discovery at an old residential school in Canada where 215 children were found, like remains from one of those residential schools. And so he hasn't like shared anything about it or talked about that. And so I can understand that frustration. And from what I've read, I'm understanding that co-opting trauma is like using it as an inspiration for a story. I think, again, I'm just literally, the dictionaries did not help me out. So the majority of the conversation has been that this is bad, this is gross. And, you know, various people say, you know, they don't want to read it, or, you know, maybe if you've read it, you need to look at this. A lot of people have gone back and changed their Goodreads reviews, which I don't really know what that does, but I find it, I'm not gonna lie that I find it hard when it's something I directly like to try to see all sides or not immediately put up my defenses. But again, I'm not Indigenous, so I have to take a backseat and listen to Indigenous people who are saying that this is harmful and is hurtful, especially since these things aren't something of the past. Like, people who survived these schools are still alive, people who lost loved ones to these schools are still alive, and this trauma is very much real. And then it's just been like re-brought up with this recent discovery of just one residential school in Canada. Some things I will say though are that I've seen some people, various, being like, well, I'm his age or I'm American and I knew about residential schools. I didn't learn about them. In the United States, education is so varied from state to state. Hell, even within states, from town, county, district, very varied. And obviously there's homeschool, private school, public school. And I'm sure Canada has its own variation also. So I don't think that's a fair statement. I believe that he didn't know about it. I only found out about residential schools through the book community recently, and that they were also in America. So it's not fair to say, how did he not know? Because I didn't know. There's a US school system for you. I mean, honestly, do you know how much Black history I've learned from Twitter alone that I did not learn in school? So let's not depend on our schools in America to teach everybody about accurate history and how that happened. Also, like I said earlier, how come I've never heard of this? Like, everyone can't keep up with everything. Most people don't Google every author. Like I said, I don't. Once it's being talked about in the main book sphere is when you hear about it here, but I do not actively go out and search about information on authors. I don't even read author interview. Like, I just don't, because I would have no time to do everything else and it would just be a dark place. So also that obviously there's awareness being brought to it now, and so people can read that review, read comments that people have made, especially from Indigenous people in our community, and think about how they feel about the story going forward. I did like that one saying, like, you can still like the book, but and not acknowledge the critique, which I think is important. So again, TJ Klune hasn't said anything. We have that interview and podcast from last year, and obviously, if not directly, it was definitely a part of the inspiration. I did watch a video on Instagram from another Indigenous reviewer who I will link. It's a long video, and their opinions on it were different. And so I don't want to put this here as, see, this one person saying thing, because no group of people are a monolith. And so it was just a different take, because I had been seeing kind of the similar ones or people retweeting something else. And I always try to want to get different perspectives. And sometimes it's hard when there is one person who maybe has more followers or something, and so they state an opinion and people just retweet that, and people don't add in their own opinion, or maybe their opinion just magically retweet that, which is fine. I'm just saying, like, if I could find multiple different takes or perspectives on it, I would share them, but I really have just found the one side, like, no, it's wrong, it's bad, he definitely co-opted trauma, etc., etc., and then another one I had a different perspective. And in her video, she was just saying that a lot of fantasy stories are based on so many things in history, so many horrific things. It's a common thing for fantasy to be pulled from actual things that are happened and then spun, to make them magical, sometimes sad, sometimes happy. She said that the story of the house in Cerulean Sea having a positive spin on it and it being a good place and a safe place for these children was like a hopeful take on the story. And so I'll link that video. It's on Instagram if you want to watch it. Just like, she does talk about some maybe triggering content in the beginning about personal experiences. So just be careful of that in the beginning, because she has lost family members. And so she talks about a lot of that in the beginning. This is not just for the house in Cerulean Sea though. This is for in general when an author or a book controversy happens. I feel like everyone always, if you loved the book and you just read it, you didn't see anything, then when something comes out, you're like, I knew something was wrong. And I'm like, did you though? Or are you mad now that you didn't call it? And now you want to go back and say, I knew something was wrong. Or I loved this book now I hate it. Like does it make you think maybe differently about the story now that you have this information? Sure. But like now you went from loving it to hating it. And then the people who change their Goodreads reviews or star reviews, like go back and like, I'm giving this 1 star, like it was 5 stars or even 3 stars. I'm giving this 1 star. I just don't know what any of those things do at the end of the day. Like changing your Goodreads review, saying like, oh, I knew it all along, or why didn't anyone tell me about this? Like, I just don't know what that does. It does nothing, but it gives you attention, I guess, but I just don't understand that thought process. Like, you can definitely take it in and be like, this kind of changes how I feel about it now, whatever, but there is no justice you're delivering when you change a Goodreads star rating from 3 to 1. I really don't understand, especially so after a book has been published, like first year, it's already done well. I don't know what that's doing. Like, I think that bringing attention to something like this is definitely important. Like I said, always for you to have this information so you can, read about it, do research, and make those decisions yourself. And I think that's more what we should be doing, is advocating for more people to learn about residential schools, because like I said, I didn't know about them. So it's like, how about we start, like, here's a book you should read, or a podcast you should listen to, or something, but not, I'm serving justice by changing my star rating to 1 star. What does that do? It's like, what do you want? A pat on the back? Great. But like, no, To me, that just, I don't know. It's something with like a book community. It happens all the time when something happens. It's like, I read this book 10 years ago and now I found this person's a shitty person, so I'm going to change my rating to 1 star. What does that do? It does nothing. Like, bring awareness to the situation, let people make their decisions, and then also maybe if it was something, you know, against a group of people or something gross that they, you know, like appropriate or whatever, how would we share things that you think did it better? Like, here's a book from an author who did it better, or here's a nonfiction so you can learn about this, or here's, like, share those things. I'm not trying to say this just in like defense of TJ Klune. Do what you want. I do not care if you do a 1 star or whatever. I just want to know what it does. For the whole purpose of this is to make people aware, especially with current events, that he used trauma of Indigenous people as inspiration for his book. So I think that we've made people aware. People are going to know from this video. Very important. I hope we all, like, I have one that I'm going to read soon, learn more about residential schools and just how traumatic they were and still are. You know, people are still alive, and do that. Let's focus on that. If you don't want to see TJ Klune on your timeline, you don't want to support his books going forward, I totally get that. But instead of saying, I changed my review to 1 star, or I didn't know this, why is no one talking about this? I don't know. Definitely, if you want to change like your written review or something, and again, you can change your star rating review. I just want to ask you what that does. There's no justice you're giving to survivors of residential schools by changing your review to 1 star. Nothing. It gives them nothing. It does nothing. But educating yourself and sharing that information with other people, that is helpful. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. It was just something that was bothering me, and people may be mad, but that's just my opinion on that. But would I like TJ Klune to acknowledge this? Yes. He also did recently on Twitter was talking about some really scary mental health issues he was having. So I don't know if he's going to be on Twitter recently or in the near future. And yeah, he was on this week. I don't know what triggered that or what affected that. But I would like him to say something, because he did address issues in a previous work. His young adult book, The Extraordinaries, has had very pro, or it still has very pro cop sentiments in it. And I think the main character's dad is a cop. And so he, like, I think there's maybe some police brutality that is kind of like looked upon positively in the story, because in the main character's eyes, he sees his dad as a hero. And so, of course, with escalations of all the violence and murder of George Floyd and everything that happened last year, he I don't know if someone pointed it out to him or if he just made a statement, but he put out a statement saying, you know, he recognizes that that's harmful to perpetrate in his story, that he would fix it going forward in the next book. And I mean, I haven't read them, so I can't speak to that, but it's just saying that he did address that. So I'm hoping that he will address this. But from both interviews, it does look that at least a little bit, if not amongst other things, the residential schools were used as partial influence for the book. And however you feel about it, I mean, just from what we have right now, that's what it looks like, because he hasn't said anything. This was a tough one. I hope what I said was making sense and you didn't hear my rocking ottoman the whole time because I kept bumping it with my knee. But I will link anything I can down below, definitely those interviews, so that you can read them, and the Goodreads review, and then also any other article related to what I talked about previously. But oh man, editing this is going to be a bitch. So I wanted to share this thread by Claribel Ortega, and I don't know if this was like in response to what was happening with the anthology that I spoke of earlier, because she does have a story in there, but I'm just going to read it because I think it applies to the book community, especially book Twitter in general. One thing I've learned about my Twitter usage is I haven't been using mute and blocking functions as freely as I should have been. I'm examining how I use this space though, and how and who I interact with, since there are just so many vicious weirdos on this site. And I honestly can't keep giving energy to randos. My energy is for myself, my writing, and for the kids I write for. That's the job, not fighting on Twitter. The book community also needs to really re-examine how it handles stuff on here. We can't simultaneously say we're fighting for marginalized creators while harassing them and running them off these platforms. There's a difference between a mistake and pattern of behavior. And absolutely nobody is born knowing it all. We're expected to stay professional and never answer back in the face of so much violence toward us, and it's legit abusive. Anyway, going forward, I am changing my approach to the site. I'm not dealing with people trying to build a platform off tearing others down or taking their frustrations out on me and other creators instead of the very large industry of publishing. Protecting my energy, and that's it. So I think that part was really important. There's a difference between a mistake and pattern of behavior, and absolutely nobody is born knowing it all. And I don't say that to try to excuse or absolve anybody of any wrongdoing. We are all going to make mistakes. It just depends on the severity and how many people know of the mistake you make. Obviously, when you are a traditionally published author with a book that did really well, there's definitely going to be more people and more backlash versus maybe, you know, a small book blogger or just a smaller person in their everyday life. But we all make missteps, and I think something that we tend to do, especially on book Twitter, is we take a thing depending on, and it depends on the severity of the thing. Everything does not deserve to be treated equally because some things are so much more severe than others. But it's really like a thing, and then it's like attack mode. And yeah, it's hard. And it's also hard when you have limited information. Even if you want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, you don't have much to work on. They're not saying anything. So I don't know. I don't know how it can be a healthier space. I know a lot of people don't like Twitter. I mean, I just don't go on for the day if I don't like it, but I don't know how to make it a better place. Like, I still appreciate all the knowledge that I've gained from Twitter, and obviously where people share perspectives, share information. I mean, I wouldn't have known about this unless for Twitter, but there is definitely a line it crosses sometimes, and it gets really like, So I don't know how you fix that. Maybe, I mean, it also is just kind of the nature of Twitter in general, and I don't know how to make that better. But now you have this information about these titles, well, the anthology coming out, the authors involved, and this book. And so think about that. I will link, I'm trying to look for resources to learn about residential schools and like books, because I mean, we need to take that on ourselves, and not asking Indigenous creators to do that work for us. Google is free. So let's take our time to educate ourselves and spread awareness and education and resources so that hopefully the next generation of authors won't make these same mistakes and can learn and have a better foundation on which to write their stories. We can only hope, but that is all. I love how Nigel literally made me bring him up here, and then he just came up here to sleep. He didn't do no work in this video. Baby, I'm sorry. Look. Oh, he's so sleepy. He don't have a job. Why is he so tired? But I was like, I'm gonna have to put my songs to Nigel on freaking Patreon because YouTube's just trying to cramp my style. Oh my goodness, did you get cuter in the last minute? So I apologize that you had to listen to my congested ass during this whole video, but I appreciate you if you watched this entire thing. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing. Check out my description. I'll have links to all of this info, my social media channels, information about things going on in the world so you can learn about them, maybe help out in some way, spread awareness. And did I say links to my social media? Maybe. Ways to support my channel. I am working on a Patreon, y'all. I just am like, is this good enough? Is this worth it? I'm a mess. Also working on merch. Again, I'm just nervous about it being good enough for you all. So look out for that. It's coming soon, but I don't have anything else. So stay blessed, moisturized, hydrated, and sunscreened. Aware, you know. Protect your peace though. And we'll see you in our next one. Say bye. 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 I just got news that Sony has a deal, a 7-figure deal with N.K. Jemisin to develop the Broken Earth trilogy, and she is going to be adapting it. Oh my God. I don't know if it's supposed to be a TV or a movie, but I'm just so excited. So here's some happy news to end this video.